The president sent a letter to lawmakers in which he claimed that it is too soon to know the full scope and duration of this conflict. Now, on Sunday, he said it could last 4 to 5 weeks. Yesterday, he said it could be more than 4 to 5 weeks. Today, he said it's too soon to know. And tomorrow we'll be shooting for Christmas, I guess. However long it takes until everyone stops talking about how many times his name is in the Trump-Epstein file. Nobody saw it coming. Not the reporters, not the political analysts, not even the people who spend every waking hour glued to their screens waiting for the next bombshell. Because this week didn't begin with a leaked document landing on a journalist's desk at 2 in the morning. It didn't start with a whistleblower stepping into the spotlight with shaking hands and a folder full of secrets. There was no dramatic investigative report, no midnight press conference. It started with a golf cart. A golf cart, a child's camera, and a smile that looked like it belonged on a Sunday afternoon family barbecue. Not on the face of the most powerful man in the world. Donald Trump, the sitting president, was cruising around on that cart with his granddaughter. The camera was small, probably propped up on the dashboard, and he was talking into it the way any proud grandfather would. Loose, warm, eyes crinkling at the corners. He looked relaxed in a way that presidents almost never look. No teleprompter, no advisors hovering behind the curtain, just a man, a kid, and a camera rolling. And then, right there, between a laugh and a turn of the steering wheel, he said it. 7 wars. He claimed he had stopped 7 wars. I ended 7 wars. And all I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. Just like that. Dropped it into the conversation the way someone might mention they fixed the kitchen sink over the weekend. No buildup, no list of conflicts, no names of countries or leaders or peace agreements. Just a number, 7, tossed out with the ease of a man talking about his golf handicap. Then he moved on, smiled again, kept driving. The clip hit the internet and detonated. Within hours, it had been shared, screenshotted, clipped, remixed, and debated across every platform that exists. Supporters grabbed it and held it up like a trophy. See, they said, this is a real leader, a man who gets things done and doesn't need a speech to prove it. Warm, human, authentic. Critics watched the exact same 15 seconds and felt their stomachs turn. A president of the United States, casually reducing the horror of global conflict, the lives lost, the cities leveled, the families shattered, into a throwaway boast on a golf cart video meant for YouTube. Same clip. 2 completely different movies playing in people's heads. And sitting in a studio in Los Angeles, under bright lights with a live audience settling into their seats, Jimmy Kimmel watched that clip. He watched it once, then rewound it and watched it again. And somewhere between the first viewing and the second, something clicked behind his eyes. This wasn't just content for a monologue. This was a crack in the wall. A tiny, unscripted moment where the performance slipped just enough to show what was underneath. But here's the thing. The golf cart wasn't even the sharpest blade that week swung at the White House. Because while America was still chewing on the 7 wars clip, something else landed. Something that turned a communication headache into a full-blown migraine. Trump, aboard Air Force One, the most iconic aircraft on the planet, reportedly looked at a journalist and called her Piggy. My MPD, he called a reporter Piggy, not behind closed doors. Not in a whispered aside that someone overheard. Right there, openly, with the casual cruelty of someone who had long stopped worrying about consequences. And just like that, the White House had a brand new fire to put out. Not a policy fire, not a legal fire, something harder to fight, a perception fire. The kind that doesn't need experts to explain. The kind where ordinary people hear a word and form an opinion in the time it takes to blink. Now picture the scene. The press briefing room, cameras locked on, reporters leaning forward and walking to the podium with the posture of someone who had rehearsed every breath. Karoline Leavitt. Sweet little Karoline had to defend her boss calling a reporter Piggy on his plane. Look, the president is very frank and honest with everyone in this room. You've all seen it yourself. You've all experienced it yourselves. And I think it's one of the many reasons that the American people re-elected this president because of his frankness. She was calm, she was polished. Every word came out measured and smooth, like she'd ironed each sentence flat before letting it leave her mouth. And she didn't do the thing most people expected. She didn't deny it happened. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look uncomfortable. Instead, and this is where it gets fascinating, she took the entire moment and flipped it upside down. The president isn't rude, she explained. He's frank, he's honest, he's direct. And that directness, that's exactly why 70-something million people voted for him because they're tired of politicians who hide behind rehearsed smiles and carefully tested phrases. It was a good answer, a really good answer. The kind of answer that, on any other week, might have actually worked. But this wasn't any other week. And the person sitting behind a desk 3,000 miles away, waiting for exactly this kind of answer, was Jimmy Kimmel. That's right. Frankly, his frankness is what makes him so great. If anything, we should be franking him for calling them pigs. Kimmel didn't need a scandal. He never did. What he needed was exactly what Karoline had just handed him on a silver platter. A contradiction so clean, so polished, so perfectly packaged that all he had to do was hold it up and let the studio lights do the rest. He started slow, almost gentle. He played Trump's words first, then Karoline's defense, then Trump's words again, back and forth, like a lawyer presenting evidence to a jury that was already leaning his way. And the audience? They started laughing before he even delivered a punchline. Because when you put the clip and the spin next to each other, when you lay them side by side under bright lights with nowhere to hide, the gap between them becomes the joke. No comedian needed. The material writes itself. The energy in the room changed. What had started as a typical late-night monologue suddenly felt heavier. It wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was a live, real-time autopsy of how modern political spin actually operates. Kimmel laid it out like a mechanic explaining why your car keeps breaking down. Step 1, something embarrassing happens. Step 2, move fast. Step 3, change the frame. Step 4, replace the ugly word with a nicer word. Step 5, hope. Desperately hope that nobody goes back and watches the original clip closely enough to realize the explanation never actually addressed what happened. But Kimmel didn't stop at the press room. He kept pulling the thread, the military ceremony where Trump wore a hat with his own brand on it, the Bible being sold with a price tag still dangling from the spine. The poll numbers waved around like a report card from a proud child. One after another, Kimmel placed them in a line, not as separate incidents, but as pieces of a single, unmistakable pattern. Brand first, ego first, camera first. Reality somewhere in the back of the line, hoping someone remembers to call its name. And then came the hit, the one that made the audience gasp before they laughed. Remember how you cheated on Melania with a porn star right after she gave birth to Barron, and now you guys sleep in separate bedrooms, and she looks at you like Vin Diesel looks at The Rock. This is that type of situation. It's not going away. The studio erupted, but Kimmel didn't pause to enjoy it. He was already moving, pushing forward through the week's wreckage with the momentum of a man who knew the best part was still ahead. But according to the gang at the Hannity show, the ceasefire is going great if you ignore all the fire and focus solely on the cease. She doesn't answer the question. She puts it in witness protection. The laughter that followed wasn't just amusement. It was something deeper. A room full of people recognizing something they'd felt but couldn't quite name. That uncomfortable itch when you watch a press briefing and know, somewhere in your gut, that the answer you're hearing has nothing to do with the question that was asked. Kimmel put words to that feeling, and once he did, the feeling became impossible to unfeel. That was what made Karoline Leavitt's week not just difficult, but genuinely, structurally, impossible. She wasn't defending a quote. She wasn't managing a single news cycle. She was standing at a podium trying to hold back a wave that had already crashed. The pattern was already out there, already screenshotted, already memed, already living rent-free in the minds of millions. Every time she opened her mouth to explain, the explanation fed the pattern. Every reframe made the frame more visible. Every polished answer made the unpolished reality look worse by comparison. Kimmel saw this, and he said it out loud, the way only someone with a microphone and nothing to lose can say it. The strangest part of this entire week, he told his audience, wasn't any single moment. It wasn't the golf cart or the insult or the hat or the Bible. It was that every defense the White House offered made the original clip cut deeper. Frankness stopped being a virtue and became a punchline. Authenticity stopped being a shield and became the very thing people were laughing at. Because if this, all of this, the name-calling, the branding, the casual war talk on a golf cart, if this was the authentic version, then America was watching a president who couldn't tell the difference between a serious moment and a content opportunity. That line didn't just get laughter, it got nods. Slow, quiet nods from people who felt it land somewhere real. Then Kimmel made his final turn, the sharpest one, the one the whole room had been holding their breath for without knowing it. He circled back to the one question that kept floating above every other headline that week like smoke that refused to clear. If transparency is the brand, if honesty is the selling point, if frankness is the whole identity, Then why won't they release the files? The ones people keep asking about. The ones connected to names the whole country already knows. The ones sitting in folders that could be opened with a single signature. He didn't answer the question. He didn't need to. Started with a catastrophe and he ended with an apostrophe. Hey, sorry I threatened to kill your civilization. Let's hang out. You want to play Xbox or something? The silence after it sat in the room like a third presence. Heavy, patient, impossible to ignore. Because the White House had managed to produce an answer for every other uncomfortable moment that week. The tone, handled, the insult, reframed, the ceremony, defended. But on this one topic, on this one specific, deeply uncomfortable subject, there was nothing. No spin, no reframe, no polished redirect. Just a gap where words should have been. And once people notice where the words stop, once they see the exact spot where the confident voice trails off into nothing, that silence doesn't disappear. It grows, it echoes, it becomes the loudest part of the story. Kimmel's final words that night were the ones that stayed. He said the strangest thing about this presidency isn't any single scandal or mistake or outburst. It's that the line between governing and performing has been erased so completely that nobody inside the building seems to notice it's gone. A casual YouTube clip becomes a national news story. A military ceremony becomes a branding opportunity. An insult becomes proof of honesty. A legitimate question becomes an attack. And somewhere in all of that noise, the public is quietly expected to believe that if they feel uneasy, if something in their gut tells them this isn't how it's supposed to work, that the problem is with them. Then he landed it. Clean, final, with the precision of a carpenter driving the last nail. A clip doesn't care how confidently someone explains it away. Once people have seen it, once it's played on their screen and burned into their memory, the clip has already won. Spin can chase it. Spin can run as fast as it wants, arms pumping, sweat on its brow. But the clip is already there, already playing, already part of the record. And no amount of frankness, no amount of reframing, no amount of polished podium answers can make people unsee what they've already seen. The audience erupted one final time, and that was the real humiliation of the week. Not a shouting match, not a dramatic meltdown caught on camera. Not some explosive confrontation with fists pounding tables and voices cracking under pressure. It was quieter than that, colder. It was walking into a week overflowing with contradictions, wrapping each one carefully in clean language and confident smiles, presenting them to the public like gift, and then sitting back and watching as a man behind a desk with a microphone and a stack of video clips took it all apart, piece by piece, in front of millions of people who were laughing and nodding at the same time. He didn't need hidden sources. He didn't need insiders or leaked documents or secret recordings slipped under his door. He had the clips. And once those clips hit the screen, once the words and the defenses sat next to each other under bright, unforgiving studio lights, the story didn't need telling. It told itself. If that breakdown left your jaw on the floor, hit subscribe right now. Turn on notifications so you're the first to know when the next one drops. And leave a comment below. Do you think the spin can keep outrunning the clips, or has the pattern become too obvious to hide? Because these moments aren't just late-night comedy. They're a window into how power actually works when the cameras are on and nobody thinks the audience is paying attention. Stay tuned, because the next chapter of this story, it might be the one nobody recovers from.